Welcome to Breaking the Couch, a weekly conversation demystifying what happens in and behind the therapy scene to support your healing journey. We're your hosts.
I'm Dr. Dowdson, a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified school psychologist, and a trauma specialist with Playfully Psyched.
And I'm Dr. Joharchi with Soft Art Psychology, a licensed clinical psychologist.
We're here aiming to provide you with mental health tools to address the cycle of generational trauma across the age span, from infancy and childhood to adulthood.
For more information, visit our Instagram page at Breaking the Couch or our website, breakingthecouch.com. While we hope you love listening to and learning from our podcast, it's not a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
The holidays are approaching. My favorite holiday has already passed. My favorite or my second favorite? My favorite is probably my birthday or birthdays in general, but I also really love Halloween. And those are the only ones I really celebrate. Has passed, but then there's some other holidays that are coming up for people that I think would be really helpful for us to talk about as we get closer to spending time with family, relatives, friends, not spending time with family, relatives, friends, and what people could do to mitigate their emotions during this time. What do you think?
I think that's great. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so funny because people will be like, I don't know if you get this question, but people will be like, oh, are these times super, super busy for you? You must be swamped during the holidays. And I'm like, actually, no, that's the quietest time of the year for me, as far as like American Christian holidays go. People just seem to be like, oh, I can't meet for like 3-4 weeks. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, we usually meet once a week. So it's funny that people think that that would be our busiest time, because I could see where they're coming from. Like, that might be a more stressful time, but it's actually a time that a lot of people go do other things with their, chosen families or other loved ones.
Exactly. I think that's a good point. It may be helpful for people to increase their
I
sessions
think
or
so.
to maintain their sessions during this time.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think in a lot of cases, it the actual holiday season probably isn't that busy, but I have seen a rev up right afterwards. And sometimes that's because, at least in the US, people do like New Year's resolutions, which I always discouraged against those things, but like where they like make a plan. And so sometimes, improving their mental health is on that plan, or it's a part of their overall fitness. And so maybe January, February, things might pick up a bit. But then there's also the aftermath of the stress that they experienced during the holidays and they took time off. That could happen too. So mine probably is about consistent, but I do have people that will not come on the week or two of the specific holiday that they may be celebrating. So there's some impact there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that happens afterward, I experienced that too, where afterward is like, okay, this is what, this relative said or did, or and kind of debriefing from some of that. And so I thought maybe we could kind of come up with a couple of suggestions for what to do before, Aunt says some stuff that hurts your feelings, right? um, so I don't know. I was thinking a little bit about like kind of that toolbox that we sort of help people with, no matter what sort of EMDR therapy or deep dive trauma recovery work we're doing. I'll go back to the real basics of, what are some of the tools that you could use right now in this moment as you see the aunt who grabs your tummy when you walk in or whatever, right? Maybe that's just my stuff. I don't know.
I did have an aunt grab my hips before, and it was it was, yeah.
When I would go see family in Iran, there's different, like, more direct things that people will say, but one of the things would be like, "Kheli chach shodi," like, you got so fat, and then like, go grab your fat area. I was like, oh my God, this is so not what I want to be happening right now. So before that happens, what can we do to sort of help people with preparing for the aunt that's going to grab the body part that you didn't want her to grab, and which is not okay, and you say it and I said it and all that, but there are
And
certain things.
sometimes, yeah, it's not
Mhm.
okay if you said it, and that's great. And then you're also sometimes just in shock,
Yeah,
even though maybe you're expecting it, but like you're in shock. And it wasn't a family member, but I do
totally.
remember there was a coworker that I hadn't seen in a really long time. Culturally, she's different. She's actually Indian. And I hadn't seen her in a while, and I was excited to see everyone. I was, like, visiting my job and blah, 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 and I will never forget, she's like, "Oh my, you," and she, like, puffed out
Oh,
her face and,
oh
like, did this,
no.
like, it was very ASL of her, right? Like, puffed out
Mm,
her face, did her hands, like, in the large gesture,
mm.
and then she's like, "Oh, you so fat." And I was like, "Oh my god," like
I have the chills just listening.
yeah, and so I was just in shock, right? And so I couldn't even say that nothing. I think I might have laughed or like, "Mhm," and like like
Mhm,
turned or whatever. Um, so I think one of the things that I want people to put in their toolbox is a plan, like itself,
mm,
right? And so kind of thinking about you might know that some of these things are gonna happen, and if not, like, prepare yourself right now as you're listening to this, right? There may be someone in your family, maybe a friend, maybe some of a grandparent of one of your friends or something that says this to you or says something to you that could be hurtful, right? Your plan could be, right, coming up with with my patients, I'll talk about pivoting, right?
mm,
And so it's like, we'll say like hi and pivot, or you'll just say like, you'll say something really short that you have like scripted, right? Good to see you too, and pivot, right? And like you go off to talk to someone else, you literally like pivot your body, you change the subject, something like that that gets you just out of that interaction because sometimes when we stay, that feels worse and the aftermath. And so if you can plan for yourself to high and pivot, that may be helpful. So that's one of my tips I would give.
I love that. I'm definitely adding that to my toolbox, yeah. I like the, like, physical removal of self instead of, like, kind of feeling a little frozen and staying or whatever, yeah.
Mhm,
So the
mhm,
pivot, okay. I think one thing I like to do, and this is something that folks I think could do before they even enter a room or a Zoom or wherever you are, is kind of doing some breathing so that they could just kind of get their parasympathetic nervous system on board, basically kind of chill the body out
mhm,
before they are like overstimulated or whatever. Maybe they like the stimulation. But like kind of doing like a 3, 3, and 3, where they're breathing in for a few seconds, if that's something that their lungs could do, holding it for a few seconds, and then breathing out for a few seconds, and just doing that a few times. Doesn't have to be anything super complicated.
mhm, mhm. With some breathing. And so it sounded like you were doing it kind of not even a deep breath, but just like um a counted breath.
Mhm,
Nice, nice. It can definitely be really helpful just to regulate your system, calm yourself down a bit. I think it also is really helpful, like you said, for people to kind of be attuned with their body in advance, right? And so kind of filling yourself up with some of the things that make you feel good. And maybe
mm,
that's stretching, right? Maybe that's taking some walks, maybe that's doing something really playful, but basically like filling your cup well before you're entering into what could potentially be both loving and stressful
mhm,
environment, right? And so that you are, like you said, yours is like calming that parasympathetic nervous system, and mine is too. Mine is also like filling you with joy, right? So that you have a longer tolerance or more tolerance for some of the stress that comes along with being around people, kind of period.
mhm. And Dr. Datum, would filling ourselves with joy also help remind people of who they are, help people tap into that genuine self?
Absolutely, right? I
Yeah.
mean, even doing that, right? Like tapping into inner child, inner you, tapping into
Mhm,
the things that you uh, do like about yourself, even if you struggle with self-esteem,
mhm,
right? Because I know I don't really go to too many family functions, but when I did, sometimes, depending on what role you have within your family and what that looks like, sometimes going into these events, even though again you're excited can make you question who you are or can make you revert back to a version of yourself that you're like, oh, I thought that I was over this, or I thought that I don't do this anymore. But how come when I get back with
totally.
my family, like I'm back to being this like little kid, or I'm back to tantruming, or whatever the case may be. And so giving yourself some of those reminders and like filling your cup that way beforehand could be really helpful.
Absolutely. I love that. And another one is kinda just, like, sort of related, but just having if you have one person that you could call or text, that could kind of also anchor you, that could be super helpful. I see you smiling over there. I know you've been my one person when I'm visiting relatives. I'll be like, hey, can I call you or text you if things should get too much?
Mhm.
And of course, he said yes. So, just kind of like communicating that need and seeing if somebody is available. If not, if you happen to have like a community member or therapist or some type of help, healing provider in those ways, that could be helpful. But it really, it's really just one of those people that also remind you of your genuine self. Maybe they could do the type of listening that you love. Maybe they, could be playful and jokey, or maybe they could listen and not really judge, or whatever it is that you love in those moments. But I think just having that call a friend could be helpful.
Yeah, I think I smiled too because I used to ask a friend and say, "Hey, I need you to be my buffer. I need you to come to this event with me if you're available. Even if you have to show up late or come, leave in advance or something, but like it'll be helpful because I feel like you know me so well in the version of me that I am now, and maybe my family or my relatives know me in their way, and that's maybe a way I don't feel comfortable or I don't really like being. And so you're going to help pull me into the me that I love and that I'm like comfortable being, right? And you can kind of create that buffer. And they won't be asking me personal questions because they'll be asking you, and you're my friend, and you don't really know them or care about them, so it won't like bother you as much. And so it would. I just smile because I think about certain instances. I even had one where I did a Mayday. I like sent a text to a friend who like didn't live far from where I was. I was like, Mayday, I'm being ambushed. Can you come?
Mhm. It's like that.
And
Yeah.
they like randomly showed up. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. Um, so I love that. I love that, right? Having someone that you could, if you have someone like that in your life and you can
Mhm.
set up in advance, like, hey, can I text you, call you? Dr. Hartree is absolutely right. That can be uh, really healing and preventative too.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I before I summarize our 4 tips, I really want to kind of like highlight, and I hope that, folks will want to hear more about this, because I love what you said about, not all of us spend time with relatives or family of origin, right? For various reasons, and that's okay too. That's a certainly reason to kind of rev up the toolbox, with all this like Hallmark stuff and ways that we think that we should be spending time. So I'm really happy you said that. That's really great for anyone tuning in. But yeah, some of the 4 tips that you got from your trauma recovery therapist today were, the pivot, Dr. Dowchin's pivot,
Mhm.
which I will be using, and the counting breaths, the 3, 3, and 3, 3 in, hold for 3, and 3 out. What else was it? It was the doing joyous things. Yeah, that was a great one too. And then call a friend or text a friend. Mhm.
Okay, so as always, if you guys want to hear more things from us, please tag us on Instagram at Breaking the Couch. You can tag us in your stories, leave comments on our posts. We also have a website where you can fill out a little survey and just say, hey, more of this, less of this, ask questions, get questions answered, whatever you need. And that's breakingthecouch.com. Whenever we do talk about books as a resource, we put them in the bookshop, and you can go to the bookshop and purchase books from there. It does give us a little tiny kickback to help produce the rest of these episodes, but then it also saves some local bookstores, right? Books are amazing and so important in our world. And
Mhm.
so let's save those bookshops across the country. So until next time.
If you are looking for a therapist for yourself or your child, you can visit our websites, playfullypsych.com or softheartpsychology.com.
We appreciate you joining us this week and can't wait till there's another opportunity to jump on the couch with you next week.